The longest period without eating or drinking? 2 years, 5 months, and 12 days. What was the longest time you went without sleeping? During those 50 days of dry fasting, there was some episodic sleep, but for the next 2 years and 5 months, there was no more sleep. Did you not sleep at all? Were you just running at night? Yes, I was just running. Chuck Norris once came to Moscow. He was with his young partner in a restaurant, and he said, "Don't overdo it with Russian cuisine, or tomorrow you won't be able to do your 1,200 squats." The next day I thought, let me try those 1,200. I did 50, and ended up with my tongue hanging out. It took me a month. Then I managed to do those 1,200 in 20 minutes. Then I reached 3,000. I want to show what the human body is capable of in the absence of consumption. I want to run 800 kilometers non-stop. No food, no water, no sleep. 800 kilometers, not 80. I run 80 kilometers every day. We're going to record all 800 kilometers on camera. You spent 15 years in bars and clubs, eating and drinking whatever you wanted. During that time, I was developing, so don't be surprised now. Now I am as I am, and you are as you are. I quickly achieved financial stability and realized I needed to take a completely different path, which I began to do with the birth of my daughter. She was a great source of motivation for me. Although I wasn't sure where to go next, I felt certain I needed to change something in my life. After the age of 40, I began to experience moments where, after eating, I felt sleepy and lost interest in life. It was all about eating, drinking, and sleeping. My wife is 18 years younger than me, and I could tell I was deteriorating. Although it was not obvious externally, internally, my body told me so. I am now 55 years old. My path began thanks to Goltis, a very respectable person and a serious practitioner. He fasted for 14 days without food or water, and then continued with water, fasting a total of 54 days. I went to practice dry fasting with him. By then I was already running and exercising. He asked me if I was the one who ran in the morning. I replied, yes, I am. He told me I could do a 3-day dry fast. During the fast, I was constantly running because my body intuitively told me to move. The body guided me. I also spent a lot of time at sea. So after this 84-hour dry fast, I felt like this was my thing. This is what I have to do. This is what I should dedicate myself to. Then I went to Kiev and took a steam bath in a sauna. I came out feeling like a newborn. Afterwards, I went to Anna Yakuba's dry fasting center. She asked me how long I wanted to fast, and I told her 15 days. Finally, I fasted for 10 days. I was scared because I lost a lot of weight. She told me that I shouldn't run, that I should conserve energy and just walk and breathe. I say, why? Who said it? Because I wanted to run and move. I started running 5 kilometers a day, although sometimes my legs would get tangled and I would fall, hurting my palms and elbows. At the time, I didn't understand what toxins were affecting my head. When you don't eat or drink for 3 days and also run 5 to 10 kilometers daily, the detoxification process triples. That is, 3 days are equivalent to 9. You help the body cleanse itself with fresh air and movement. It was a process of trial and error. I had no guides or books, and I didn't want to read either. If I listened to others, it wouldn't be my own path. Then, I started going to the sauna after 36-hour fasts without food or water. Like running, the sauna also helps with detoxification. Afterward, I started going to the sauna on the 4th and 8th day of dry fasting. One time, I came out of the steam room and fainted. They took me out on a stretcher and took me to my cabin. An ambulance arrived. They opened a window, and I regained consciousness. There was a crowd that saw me being taken out on a stretcher, and then they saw me return to the steamer. In that sauna, the steam is sometimes so intense that people can only enter by squatting. They do not sit on the first or second bench, but sit on the floor and then gradually move up. I, who had been taken out on a stretcher minutes before, came in and sat directly on the top bench. For me, it was a training session. The sauna wasn't for relaxation, but for training. Then I would dive into the ice water, exhale all my air, and then dive for a minute or two. Then I would wash and steam again. I warmed up well and returned to the barrel of ice water. I exhaled all the air and submerged. So I did 12 rounds. Everything was intuitive. I always listened to my body. I didn't read anything, although there are respectable people worth reading or listening to, like Sat Marga, who also, like Goltis, practices dry fasting. But they fast and then go back to consuming whatever they want. From the beginning, I understood that food doesn't give us energy. It takes it away. The more I developed, the more I realized that I had to simplify my diet. My body told me so. Eventually, I got down to eating only fruit, and then to minimal intake, 20 hours without eating, and 4 hours to eat, mostly fruit. Then, my body learned to generate and synthesize everything it needed: proteins, fats, carbohydrates, amino acids. There is no such thing as pranic nourishment. The human being is, above all, spirit enclosed in this shell. This shell is the energetic component. That is to say, the human being is part of the energy. And what is energy? It's a Greek word. En means presence, and ergon means strength, presence of force. Energy is strength. Thus, our spirit is enclosed in this shell and moves within it. This shell produces everything necessary for life on this earth. Wherever your attention goes, there you are. Human beings can develop in any direction they wish. Fractal, completely fractal. The world is fractal. So in 2012, I realized I had found my path and started moving in that direction. Yes, stumbling. Not without difficulties. Sometimes I strayed from that path. It was not a distancing, but a kind of stagnation. Returning to consumption was like a vaccine, a realization that I shouldn't go back there. At that time, there were very few people following this path. My entourage consisted of quite serious people. Rashid Nurgaliev, former Minister of the Interior, the first head of the security service of our country to this day, and Sergei Elisev, President of the Sambo Federation of Russia and Europe. I traveled with them on private planes or attended receptions. Imagine the scene. I didn't eat anything. They felt uncomfortable with me, and so did I. I tried somehow to fit back into that lifestyle. But each time, life slapped me hard, showing me that there was no going back. It only took 5 or 6 days of regular consumption for me to gain 10 or 15 kilos. From being a young man who ran 60 kilometers at night, I went to not being able to bend down to tie my shoelaces. I ran every night during the summer. For me, it was a pleasure. People went to bed, and I put on my sneakers and went for a run. People sleep all night, and I run. In the morning, I run home, wake up my daughter. She also goes to pour ice water on herself. And at that point, I finish my business and then go to town. No sleep. Yes, of course, without sleep. So, trying to fit into this social model, 5 to 6 days of consumption, I ended up unable to bend down to tie my shoelaces. If I had lived like an ordinary person and hadn't dedicated myself to this, I would never have felt it. The body gets used to carrying that load of garbage inside, and consequently in the mind. From birth, with every spoonful, a spoon for daddy, a spoon for mommy. It all starts there with nutrition. In 2022, I was also doing live streams, and I decided to organize a retreat with my followers to assess their true readiness to move forward on this path. I told them what they needed to do to be able to join me. I asked, "Are you all ready?" And they said, yes, we're ready. We want to do 21 days of dry fasting. I told them, okay, so during those 21 days, we'll run 10 kilometers every day. That's the norm, the minimum. And then we'll walk all day, hike. We'll be constantly on the move. By the 8th or 9th day, we'll be sleepless. We'll walk at night, and so on. I had been doing broadcasts with them for 9 months, explaining how to work on themselves physically to reach this level. To join me, I gave them 10 days of preparation. During those 10 days, they had to run 21 kilometers every day from home, so that by the time they came to me, they could easily run 10 kilometers a day and keep moving afterward. And there to support you will be the mountain river, icy water, nature, and the mountains would help them. All of that would help them. That's in Abkhazia. They wouldn't be in cities, not in Moscow, not in apartments. That makes the process easier, although I myself managed to develop without those conditions, because I once read a phrase, and that was enough for me. A monk said, "It's easy to develop sitting in a monastery. Try doing it here, in everyday life." Chuck Norris once came to Moscow. He was with his young partner in a restaurant, and he said, "Don't overdo it with Russian cuisine, or tomorrow you won't be able to do your 1,200 squats." The next day I thought, let me try those 1,200. I did 50 and ended up with my tongue hanging out. That touched me deeply. It took me a month, maybe less, I don't remember. I got to 1,200. It took me about an hour. I felt like it took a long time. Then I managed to do those 1,200 in 20 minutes. Then I reached 3,000, and then I realized I could do it. I calmed down. The longest period without food or drink, 2 years, 5 months, and 12 days. I broke the fast because of my mother's illness. My mother, like every mother, gave me so much. I loved her very much. Even in her 80s, she continued to work at the market, selling children's shoes, and never missed a single day. You could set the clock with her. At 7 o'clock sharp, she was already at the market. You understand that I could give my mother everything. But then I realized that this was her life. She loved communicating with the children, and that motivated her to get up every morning to go to work. In 2022, I was at home in Moscow. My first wife, who lived there with my mother, called me and told me that she hadn't gone to the market. Then another day passed, and another. In that state I was in, without food, without drink, I immediately felt that my mother would be gone soon. When you're not consuming anything, you feel everything in advance. You see it. You don't look. You see. You don't listen. You hear. And this internal state, which I wasn't ready for. When I started the dry days, I didn't set a goal of going 2, 3, or 5 years. I set a goal of 50 days. It was related to the birth of my second daughter. I thought, I'll do 50 days, and then I'll be out. Then a woman from England joined me, named Elena, a pretty serious practitioner of dry fasting. She asked if she could join me. I said, okay, go ahead. I'd been doing 15 days. She said, I always go to Russia to fast, but I can't make it past 14 days. I've been on juice alone for 3 years, but I can't make it past 14 days. I said, okay, let's try it. I wanted to do it to swim across Lake Baikal. 50 days of dry fasting, then crossing Lake Baikal, then the birth of my daughter. In the end, I didn't fly to Lake Baikal because my wife was already very pregnant and the baby was already due. So I stayed home waiting for the birth. I thought, when my daughter is born, I'll break the fast. The baby girl was born, and Elena had already completed 21 days of dry fasting and was still going. I thought, if a woman keeps going, I'll keep going too. And so I continued. But then, during those 2 years without eating or drinking, I had many moments when I would even go to a cafe and think, that's it, I'll sit down and eat. But my inner voice told me, what's the point? You feel so good. Besides, I had returned to this state so many times before, I thought, it's the same thing again, another cleansing, another recovery. And when my mother left, now you'll understand what all this means, why people consume food. People consume because they're covering something up. Covering up their lives, their emotional situation, their problems, their free time, their habits, their pain, etc. And I felt that completely when I went back to consuming. Here in Moscow, I started drinking juices. I drank one juice after 2 years, 5 months, and 12 days. After that, it shut me down for 26 hours. My wife told me that only my heart was beating, but I wasn't moving at all. I slept for 26 hours just from drinking orange juice diluted in water. A single sip completely shut me down. I woke up, another 24 hours went by without food, then I wanted juice again. Then I started eating fruit little by little. Then I started with raw vegan food. Then I went to see my mother and decided to take care of her myself. No nurses, no doctors, no one. Because by the time I arrived, she'd already had 2 strokes. She stopped going to work because she had a stroke, just like I'd felt. Then before I arrived, she had the second one. I stayed with her from January 17th until May 4th when she left. And I went down to eating cooked food. I only ate buckwheat porridge and steamed broccoli with coconut milk. Sometimes I drink tomato juice, 2 or 3 glasses. Once I asked for French fries, and that was it. I ate that steamed broccoli and buckwheat porridge practically every day. From January 17th to May 4th, I gained 28 kilos. I felt like a failed version of a human being. I don't want to offend people who eat. I was like that myself. In fact, I began to love and understand people even more, to feel them. The state of not only their bodies, but also their minds, how they think, why they think that way, why the world is the way we see it today. All of this is, as they say, sorrow for the mind. It's a unique system. Not only does the body become dirty, but the mind and all thinking become dirty as well. You only think about yourself, only for yourself, not for others, not for anyone else. All you do is swallow everything inward. Then come the sensations of cold, hunger, fear. Sleep comes, and that's a kind of micro-death. When my mother died at her grave, I swore again that somehow, I don't know how, I would do something to help people live as long as possible. At least to live their 120, 140 years with life inside them. That is, not just alive, but with life truly flowing within them. Not that they're barely surviving, as they say, and as my mother used to say, the soul is barely in the body anymore. That poor heart couldn't take it anymore. When my mother passed away, her body immediately became very small. They carried her out wrapped in a sheet like a child. She died in front of me. I held my hand next to her, and that's how she passed away. It's a state that can't be described with words. She had dementia. She no longer called me Slava, but always called me Marina. Marina was my older sister, who also passed away before my mother. And for a while, I became addicted to eating food again. Then, starting on May 4th, I was preparing to quit eating vegan food for 3 months. But a guy came along who cooked delicious, raw vegan food, living food made from fruits, vegetables, and green leaves. He prepared dishes as tasty as I'd ever tasted in my life. I actually switched from veganism directly to fruitarianism and started practicing seriously. And in May, this guy, Alexander, who's now part of our project, came along and started cooking incredibly tasty food. Maybe if I had known about that kind of food earlier, I might not have even continued my development. It was so tasty, and in general, it doesn't consume as much energy. It doesn't harm the body as much as any cooked food does. And I'm not even talking about animal products, which I don't even want to discuss here. Especially since, as I understood from your words, your audience is more conscious advanced people. So of course, for a while I was hooked on that delicious food. But it didn't last long, because I already understood that it kind of brings me joy, but it doesn't give me life. It takes it from me, just like any other food. And then, little by little, I started to move away from consuming food. And since January of this year, 2025, I've returned to a life without food consumption. Any fruit I ate, I used to perceive as food. And if you perceive it as food, the body receives the command, food. If you give it the command that food feeds the body, then the body feeds on it. At one time, fruit was my food. And then I had shoulders like a sparrow's knees. And at that time, I believed it was nourishing me. Even when I was on the 4 and 20 diet, 20 hours without eating in a 4-hour eating window, my body was trying to get something out of the fruit as if it were food. When you say, I enter my natural state, for example, after a hard workout, the body synthesizes the necessary protein, begins to generate it. If you run, the body begins to strengthen the legs, the quadratus femoris, the calves. The avocado felt as heavy as a piece of meat. It began to make me feel flattened, drowsy. And that's when I realized it was time to quit. The time came when food just didn't do anything for me anymore. We are collective beings. We depend on each other a lot. I love people, and I want to be with people. Because I understand them, I feel them, I love them, and I don't consider myself autonomous. I consider myself a human being. I mean, I'm a spirit living in this body, and people are my brothers and sisters. That's all. How would you define for yourself the 3 main points a person must follow to achieve the results you achieve? The first and most important thing is understanding and a change of consciousness. It's the most essential. Without that, it won't work. It's not enough for someone to tell you, eat like this or do this. The question isn't why, but what for. You have to understand why you're doing it. And when you have a desire for something greater, I mean, you've tried everything. Hamburgers, black caviar, everything. You've eaten it, you've drunk it, and then you realize that everything goes in circles. And when you're fed up with all that, it no longer gives you pleasure. The mechanisms that help on this path of development are, first, movement, running, walking, but better yet, running. Then, cold water, and a light diet. Shaolin started precisely with that. Even back then, these monks understood they had to move, and they started simply with push-ups and squats, and they arrived at what we see Shaolin doing today. That is, movement. The human being is spirit, and the body is given precisely for movement. If you look at it that way, our human body, the hands, the legs, the head, why is it important to write? And why are children today degenerating by only using their fingers on screens? The legs. Were we given legs to press the accelerator and the brake? No, they were given them to move around this planet. If a person can run 1 kilometer, 10, 100, 300, they can run 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. It's a fractal. The legs are the strongest part. We must walk, run. Developing the legs is the most important thing. Movement, breathing, cold water, light eating. And when a person lightens that eating and starts moving more and more, they awaken everything. Internal reserves? They're not reserves but resources. We don't have any reserves. We don't have anything that can be depleted. And we are the ones who decide whether that resource is depleted or not. We destroy ourselves. Human beings are energy. They generate that energy themselves. They produce it themselves. The more you exercise, the more waves of energy you feel. If you don't run, you don't move, you immediately feel the illness coming on. What was the longest time you went without sleep? After day 50, day 51, 52, I didn't sleep at all. So 50 days of fasting, During the first 50 days, there was still some sleep. I had some boards where I lay down, and sometimes when I lay down, I would black out. During those 50 days, there was some episodic sleep, but for the next 2 years and 5 months, there was no more sleep. So you were just running at night? Yes, I was just running. Night fell, and I was running. Because many times I tried to go to bed but couldn't sleep, so I just ran. I don't want to start a revolution. I don't want to do anything that shakes this world. You don't have to touch people. You don't have to wake them up. If someone feels comfortable, if that's how they like living, you have to understand them, love them, no matter what. When you've been there yourself, when you understand that you yourself were that person, you can't put yourself above others. No, on the contrary, if before, for example, I didn't understand those people, there were conflicts, arguments, now I understand people so much that even when a person says something and bad things emanate from them, whether in words, actions, it doesn't matter. You just have to understand, because there's always a cause behind what happens to a person. You have to approach them in that moment, hug them, say a kind word, and you'll see how they change completely. I've experienced this many times, even on the street, in Moscow. It happened to me several times. You approach them, pay attention, and the person melts. In reality, they're a different person. It pains me that on this path at one time many people were growing up. Many people were headed in this direction, then lacked the patience, the will, the awareness, the work on themselves, and they turned around. I understand. I don't judge them. But the sad thing is that those who were going down this path are now leading others in the other direction, offering all kinds of nonsense. It's the same consumerism, only worse. All kinds of supplements, crap that they claim supposedly leads to autonomy, pure nonsense. And they're selling that to the people. They lack the will, the patience, the awareness, the work in this direction. Because most people think there's a magic pill. Everyone wants everything right away. They don't understand that this takes years of work. I want people not to fall into those traps. No supplement, no pill. Nothing in this material world is going to give a person the chance to move to a state of autonomy. Nothing you put in your mouth. No mushrooms. I hear a lot about people taking toxic mushrooms and all kinds of crap that supposedly leads to autonomy. As my mother used to say, a pill cures one thing but ruins another. It cures the kidneys, damages the heart. It cures the heart, damages something else. The same thing happens with all of this. Only the natural state, only the cleansing of the body. When a person reaches that, then there's only one step left, and that's fear, which everyone has inside, because everyone feels like everything weighs on them, even that bite of an apple, even that shuts them down. But they don't go any further. Why? Because of fear. Many say that autonomy, this path, opens up unlimited possibilities. But of those who say it, I don't see any of them showing it. I don't see them shine. I don't see them demonstrate anything. Well, you don't eat, you don't drink, so what? People won't be interested in you. But I want to show what it's giving. Now, within the framework of my development, I want to show what the human body is capable of in the absence of consumption. That I can run for a day, 2, 3, 4, without eating, without drinking, without sleeping, and keep running and running. And now I want to run 800 kilometers without stopping. Without stopping, without stopping. 800, not 80, 800. I run 80 every day. And so that people don't have any doubts, we're going to record all 800 kilometers on camera. I plan to do it in approximately 96 hours, more or less. When I started swimming across Lake Baikal, I had my daughter on board. When I started, the water was so icy, so cold. My mind offered me 1,001 ways to get out of the water and remain as if nothing had happened. It gave me so many arguments that my friends, the organizers, would all say yes, it was better to stop, to cancel, and no one would have reproached me for anything. But I understood that by doing so, I would betray myself. I would feed that black wolf, the devil, and I would feed him so well that afterward it would be very difficult for me to silence him. I mean, I would lie. I would betray myself. And that responsibility to my daughter, who was there with me, kept me from getting out of the water, from continuing. And then I felt how I overcame it, and little by little I swam and swam. How long did the crossing last? We swam for 24 hours without stopping, taking turns, 2 hours during the day, 1 at night. We swam 55 kilometers. And other times when I didn't stop, like when I ran 52 kilometers, how many times my mind whispered to me to slow down, or the Kerch Strait, which I swam across without stopping, 11.5 kilometers in 5.5 hours, without even changing my swimming style. That's why these 800 kilometers means so much. Also for those people who were going down this path, turned around, and are now even leading others in the wrong way. How am I different from others? In that I'd rather die right there on the track running than slow down. That's my level of responsibility. It's the most important thing I have. Now I'm advising people and they ask me, how do you do it? I stay in bed for an hour thinking about whether to get up or not, or whether to pour a bucket of cold water on myself. But the thing is, I've worked on it. I tell them, you spent 15 years in bars, clubs, eating, drinking, whatever you wanted, doing whatever you wanted. And at that time, I was developing. So don't be surprised now. Now I am who I am, and you are who you are. I start the race on May 4 or 5, 2025. I think it will take me about 4 or 4.5 days, according to my calculations. Along the route, there will be people who will join. The race will be called Each with His Own Victory. Someone can join and run 10 kilometers, another 3, another 5. The important thing is why and for what reason you do it. My path is this way because I do it for my daughter. I crossed Baikal in its defense. You can't simply want to not eat. Why? For what reason? The simple desire not to eat. I forbid it, even for just one day. Why do you do it if you don't understand why or what for? Well, it's fine to cleanse your body, a healing fast, for example, for 3 days. But there's no point in doing anything beyond that if you don't understand why you're doing it. If you don't have any inner motivation or sufficient awareness to understand that you have to change something in your life. That's how I started. I just went for a run, and then I felt it, and then the Creator within me guided me. In the third part, I would like to share a report about Vyacheslav's non-stop 800 kilometers run, being 5 months without food, water, and sleep, and about his return to the Autonomy, which took place in January of this year, 2025, and continues to this day.